look at how a background can be added to our game. Um, the important thing to realize about backgrounds is they're essentially a static item. That means they don't actually interact with any players or other objects, but they're really, really important for setting the scene and setting a sense of where and how you are within the game. So basically anything that is non-interactive, generally doesn't move, things like that, can be included in your background just to really set the scene for your game. Our little game at the moment is a little space game, so we're going to make something that resembles a very basic space scene. It's not going to be, again, a work of art, just like our little character. We're just going to do something that actually gives us a bit of a view of where we are. So the first thing is a background is just another sprite. So it's another graphic. So we're going to start by creating a sprite as we've done before. And we're going to create something that looks a little bit like a bit of space. So we'll edit this particular sprite. And first of all, we're just going to make it black. And I'm going to use the pen with just a slightly different size, a bit big, just to put a couple of dots as if we're doing some space. Now, some of you might already realize a problem. That problem is that this is a small sprite. We've gone with the default size. We didn't change anything. So at the moment, it's only 64 by 64 pixels. We can see that down here where it says size. And that's going to be very small compared to the size of our room. So that's something we need to take into account. So let's actually go and have a look at that now. If we go to our room and we come down to the properties of our room, you'll see that the actual size of this room is 1024 by 768. And our sprite is only 64 by 64. So you can see it's quite a lot smaller than what we have here. We're going to stick with it just for a second, just so we can see a few things along the way. But we're going to come back and obviously make a much better background. So let's go back to that sprite we're working on, and let's give it a name first. We're going to again continue with our theme of naming, so BG for background, and we'll just call it space. Okay, and we're happy with that for the moment. So we'll close that off. And what we'll do is we'll go back to our room. Now, to put a sprite of a background in, we first have to come over to the left-hand side to our layers. Now, layers is not something we've looked at properly yet. What we need to know at the moment, though, is we have two default layers. One is a background layer, and one is the instance layer. Now, in short, the instance layer is where all our objects, like our ship, go, the things that we interact with, and our background layer is where we're going to put things that are backgrounds. So we make sure we've chosen the background layer, and down the bottom here, or sorry, in the middle, you can see that there's a place for a sprite. All right, so what's happened here is our sprite has been put in, and as we've already pointed out, it's actually quite small compared to the size of the room. So it's actually only taking up a little corner at the moment. Now, there's a few things we can do to try and make this fit. The first one we might try and do is to stretch this out so that it fits in the space we have. So again, if we come over here to our left-hand side, to our properties, sorry, to our background layer, we can choose this stretch option. Now, what we see, of course, is while it has stretched the sprite out, we haven't really got the effect we're looking for because everything's been stretched. The stars are really, really big, and of course, we've lost any sort of quality. So stretch isn't really going to work for us. The other options we have are horizontal and vertical tiling. Now, tiling, as the name suggests, basically means that it's going to put another one and then another one and another one horizontally if we choose that one, and the same thing vertically. So it's going to basically multiply them out. And we can see that happening. So if we say horizontal tile, there we go. And if we say vertical tile, well, we basically fill the screen. Again, it doesn't really give us the effect we're looking for. This could be useful if you had a repetitive background, something really, really simple. But again, it's not really going to give us what we want. This doesn't look like space with stars. It looks like a weird pattern. So that's not going to work for us either. So in this particular case, our real best option is not to use one of these, but to actually draw a background that is the correct size. So again, let's remember our room is 1024 by 768 pixels. So let's go back to our background and let's actually change that size. So now what we're going to do is make it the size of the actual room. So it's 1024 by 768 and apply. And we can now get a bit more of a perspective of how much smaller our background we drew was compared to the actual room size. So now, like before, we're just going to edit this. And again, we're going to do exactly the same thing we did before, where we're just going to quickly set the background of this to be black. All right, so now I'm going to draw some white stars in, just trying to randomly click around the place, not trying to make a pattern. Might put a couple of slightly larger yellow stars in for a sec. And just for good measure, I'm going to draw a little planet in. That planet, I'm just going to make that little purple planet there. Okay, so now we have a background. Because we've kept the same name and everything, it should still be in our room. And we can see it's a much better fit now. So the background, the same one we'd already chosen because we just added to the, now fits in our room properly. We don't have any tiling or any stretching going on here because we've made it the correct size. So we've actually got what we expected. Okay, there's one other thing that we are going to do quickly with this background, and that is to actually make it move. Now you might be thinking, hang on, you said before backgrounds don't interact and don't move. And for all intents and purposes, that is correct, except for this one little thing. And that is you can actually make a background slide either horizontally or vertically, or of course both, at some set speed. And we see that down a little bit further in this horizontal and vertical speed. Why would you do this? Well, the most common reason is to basically give an impression of movement without having the actual movement happening. So we can actually make, in this case, the space background move to the left, which is going to give our character the impression of moving forward. So if you think about it, when something is moving, the background to it moves at a different speed to the character. So in this case, if we make our background move towards the left at a speed, we're going to get the impression of the character moving forward. And that means we don't actually have to create forward motion of the character, just the background. We're going to be doing this with a horizontal speed, and I've already got it set here at -5. Now the reason it's negative is something we'll discuss in a lot more detail. You just have to trust me for the moment that negative in this case makes it move towards the left, and the speed of 5 is just what I chose for the moment. Now we can test that out very quickly just by actually not running the whole game like we do up in the top here, but just by essentially running the background. So we can press play and see what it looks like. We have a problem. So at the moment our background is moving to the left, but it's gone off the screen. Not really what we're hoping for, is it? So what do we do about that? If you remember before, we talked about the horizontal and vertical tiling. Now, we've made this background the full size, so it fits our room perfectly, but as soon as we start making it move, it no longer fits. So if we in fact still turn on our horizontal tiling, we technically will be drawing a second tile off the screen where we can't see it, but when it starts to move, and the main one that we can see right now starts to move off to the left, the one that we can't see that's been tiled towards the right of it will be moving in at the same time. So we'll get the impression that it just is always there. We don't need to worry about vertical tile because we're not making it move up and down, but if we were, we might have to turn that on. So again, let's run or play the animation of the background, and this time you can see that that was technically the gap of the background, and it's moving in again. Here comes our little planet. So we can see there's the gap again, and this is the next tile slowly moving in. So that makes it look like our character is actually flying forward, but in actual fact, what's happening there is the backgrounds are moving to the left. And by changing the size of this number, so if we were to make it 10, which is particularly fast in this case, we would see and looking like our character was moving even faster. And that's something that you can actually control in the game as the game is running. So if you were wanting to speed up your character this way, you can actually change those values. So for now, let's put it back to -5, and we'll leave it at that for our background. In the next video, we're going to actually start putting some movement into this character to make it move up and down, and then we'll have a partially playable game.